Hello everyone, and welcome to another Computer Software is Your Friend tutorial. Upon request, I'm making this video today to show you what you should do when you're done installing Hackintosh, which means that I'll be assuming that you've watched my other videos, read my other blog posts, and that you're really at the Mac stage, and while you're in Macintosh and you're in your Hackintosh, and well, some things just aren't working. So essentially, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to deal with that. Not every machine's the same, so I can't really give you the dead-on hardcore guide to doing this. But what I can do is I can show you some methods, give you the benefits and the doubt, and essentially you can play around from there. Hackintosh is a lot of experimentation. But your number one best friend is going to be knowing what your hardware is, knowing the model numbers, knowing everything about it. Preferably you should have done this in Windows before installing Hackintosh, but if not, I'll show you how to get some information later on. So to start, well, you should always go and check the blog. I keep the blog more updated than the YouTube channel. I know it's a little annoying, but essentially if you go here you will have everything. Now to get to this particular stage of my site, you will need to go to the Apple window, the Apple menu, Hackintosh, and then click General, and you will arrive here, which is my guide. Now obviously this is the one place to go for all of the links in the updated series. Now if you'll note, earlier there was an Aspire 1 option here. There still is. You can go and read my Aspire 1 passages, but this one's more updated because I've decided to apply the procedure I used with the Aspire 1, which I kind of made as a log. If you read it, you'll recognize that I kind of treated the entire series as a log. Here I'm just kind of compiling together a standard procedure that should work on almost any machine, and it's really based on the same procedure I used with the netbook, amazingly enough. So essentially I'm assuming that you've already made sure that your system works and that you've installed Mac and that you've updated it to as far as you can go. In some cases, some of you might have 10.7.4 like I do. Now, just for those who don't believe me, 10.7.4 right here. 10.7.5 is set to come out very soon, relative to this video. And so is Mountain Lion, based on what I'm reading. So, of course, when that comes out, I will for surely have something on this site. I'll try and get something on YouTube. Definitely will have some kind of major installation tutorial that will definitely be on YouTube. I will never abandon you. Unless, of course, I get a heart attack in the process, but so everything you need is here, and of course, if something ever goes wrong, you can remove Hackintosh and start again. So, but I mean, that's all part of the life cycle. If you want Hackintosh to work, you're gonna have to be ready to get your hands dirty. So where do I start? Well, one of the biggest issues that you're going to have when you set up your Hackintosh is you're going to arrive and you're going to be missing some stuff. So you know what? I'm going to start with working with broken kexts, because this is the first thing that you're going to experience. Kexts are kind of like drivers. We're going to consider them as drivers. I don't have the technical definition, but in terms of a Windows user crossing over to Mac, I think this is the easiest way to understand what kexts are. So essentially, if we scroll down here, of course, here's the article. I give a little blurb in the beginning to get you familiar with what I'm going to talk about, what we're going to install. Now, of course, I just get straight to the point. I give you the installation. I give you some download links. Kext Helper and Kext Utilities are two tools that are in your toolbox to install kexts. Of course, you can do it manually, but why would you go through all the pain and misery to do it manually when you can have a utility do it for you? The utility is free, it's fast, it works, and you're better off with that. Which one should you use? that's based on personal preference. Sometimes I might specify to use one or the other, but if I do, I include the download link. Generally, I tend to use Kext utility more often, however, I'll be honest. So then, of course, you can install the kexts one by one, which some machines might absolutely need. Or you can install Multibeast, which comes from TonyMac. You can get the latest one there, or if you are in my situation and have a PC that really hates the newest one, you can get one of the old ones, particularly 2.2.2, which is excellent if you have a GeForce 8400 graphics card. Yes, that's 5 years ago. And of course, if you're dealing with a dual-core processor. Now, another thing that you might need is Efi Studio. Of course, all of these things you can download and you can fiddle with. If you're forced to get the Efi Studio, what it means is you're going to have to take a string that they're going to give you, and you're going to have to implant it in the what's it called again? in the boot settings file of your Hackintosh. I mentioned it somewhere. I should mention it on here. Yes, here. In the com.apple.boot.plist file. And that's a settings file. And of course I give you an example of the string, and this is basically for the Aspire 1. This is the string for the Aspire 1 if you have a GMA 950 or a GMA 3150 graphics card. I've got your string. I'll tell you now, this particular card for me was a pain in the rear end, so I'm happy I found it. So here, for all of you who are struggling with graphics on the Aspire 1, you might want to check out the article. The link that you need is right here. I'll zoom in just so that you can see the link. Yep. You should know the beginning, but anyway, as soon as this mouse cooperates, you basically go to working with broken kexts on your well, it cuts it off. Essentially, it's a 2011 October post. So we're zooming out. Alright, so now, if you need to do this, you'll do this and you'll be fine. You might have to install some kexts as well. It's all in the name of the game. And this is an example of one procedure you might have to do. If you're lucky on my system and you install Multibeast, just by having the right bootloader installed and by having all of these things work nicely, you'll get the graphics to work. And I mean, in a lot of cases your graphics might not work, not because your kext is wrong, but because your bootloader is wrong. So you might want to look at all the bootloaders. There are many of them. There's Chimera, there's MBI, there's Efi Empire or something. There are plenty of them. There's even some for AMD. However, once you get in the AMD territory, your arsenal is limited and your hardware compatibility is limited. So if you do get it to work on an AMD and things don't work out of the box, you're gonna have to do a little bit of searching on the web, because I mean, I don't have every computer known to man here, but I can tell you AMD is a pain. It can be a real pain. Not that an Intel can't, but Mac OS X is well known on Intel processors because, you know, they designed it for their hardware, not for ours. So unless of course you've matched their specs, then you should have a flawless install. I mean, usually when you install Mac OS X on a computer like mine that has an Nvidia card, it generally works out of the box. Sometimes when you update it, it might break. That's basically where you run into the problem. So to fix broken kexts, you can either use Multibeast, which is an excellent tool if it works, if it's compatible with your hardware. If you're using relatively new hardware, it should work. If you're using the latest hardware, your newest one should work. They've been working hard on that. So you can go ahead and check out their site, TonyMac X86. And then of course, you can always go the old school way and use kexts. You can install them with a kext utility instead of manually, because that's very nice. So I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you these two things. You might also have to use two versions of Multibeast. Some things are, it really depends on your system, but yeah. Well, installing kexts is very easy. It's ridiculously easy. All you gotta do is drag the kext, which looks like a Lego block, and you drag it into kext utility, which is a Lego block with like a doctor's stethoscope thing. So essentially, you drag and drop there, you enter your password, it will install it automatically. I don't want to install it again, so I shall quit this. But as you can see, this is how the interface looks like. It's not a big interface, not a big thing, it's just really easy. It just runs some scripts and does the job. It will copy it over, write whatever modifications it needs to make, and you'll be good to go. As for Multibeast, it's just like a standard Mac OS X installation. This is 2.2.2, which is really good for my system because my system is older. It's around 5 years old. It's running a dual-core processor. It's running an N4 8400, and I mean there's some other things here. So of course you just continue. He'll give you some instructions. You don't necessarily need to boot with iBoot, but since we're talking about bootloaders, that's another one. And then of course they give you a whole bunch of steps here because they have a different way of installing things than I do. But I mean, you can go with either one, it works. You agree to their terms, and then essentially if you have my type of system, you can just install EasyBeast and it should do everything. EasyBeast will install some of your graphics drivers. It will give you a bootloader. It will also put in some other stuff to kind of smoothen the path along the line, and it will make your computer look like something that's Mac friendly. Alternatively, you can also find other kexts in this thing, which means that you don't necessarily need to go and find a kext online, but you really should. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But yeah, you can use EasyBeast, and if you do that, your best bet is also use system utilities, which will repair permissions and rebuild caches, and then you basically restart and you should be good. You might need to go, I remember at one point I needed to boot into the installer to fix the hard drive, but that's no big deal. You just fix the permissions, repair the permissions, and you'll be fine. So essentially they give you a bunch of grayed out kexts here, but once you get to them, you can, of course, you can select this. Generally for audio, your best bet is to go with the Voodoo HDA, one of these, probably the second. And then your other best bet is the rollback if you need it, but first let's try the Voodoo HDA. It comes with a whole bunch of disk drivers. It comes with some graphics drivers as well. If ever you have any problems, you can use an NV enabler that sometimes works, not always. If you have an ATI graphics card, they've got some patches for you as well. And they've got some ID fixes. If you have a network driver, they'll give you some drivers here, but generally you're going to have to go looking for the network drivers, Wi-Fi as well. And then of course they give you some other things here. They give you a new com.boot.list if you need it. I generally never touch that. An SM BIOS, that's another way of hacking your system. And they also install some of these tools like show all files, which is really handy when you're forced to go in it solo. In the newer ones, they don't have all of these things. They've changed things up, but I mean, I remember coming here because I needed something for line. I think it was the audio. And of course here it's the same thing. You can use EasyBeast, or you can customize system utilities. You would use this time with whatever you install, and then of course kexts and enablers, and ultimately everything is in here. You would have a bootloader, you would have your kexts, network kexts that they include in that. So I mean, ultimately you would go through here and you would see if any of it matches or could match with your system, and from there you would play around with it. That's essentially what you would do. Some cases you might also need a retail driver from Nvidia. Now I've included the download link to this wherever it's needed in my blog, and of course it's very simple. You double click it and you install. Now the reason why I included a modified version is because at one point in time it was refusing to install because I needed a certain version of Mac OS X, but that was irrelevant, and it worked with getting in there somehow and taking that line out. So that's pretty much it. Now of course another thing that you might want to install, it's very handy, is a local time toggle. You double click that, it'll install, and basically what it will do is if you're dual booting with Windows, you know that time lapse in between, it'll get rid of that. Alright, so, and always, when you update, you should always update using the combo update, but you can also use the system update. So the software update, it's very easy to use. Essentially you select your updates and you install them. I won't do that now. So essentially there's that. That's one thing in your arsenal that you can work with. Another thing that you might want to know about is, well, your network drivers. Well, your network drivers have a post on that. Essentially fixing wireless issues over here. Open a new tab. And essentially you would come here and, well, you would read my instructions. I basically tell you the order of procedures that you have to do. So basically you would download and install the kext. Download and install the kext from a site called kexts.com, and that's the site I'm going to show you in a minute. And essentially you would use a program like Kext Utility to install it, which is what I showed you just a few minutes ago. Whenever you install a kext with Kext Utility, unless where you download it explicitly states an order of installation and restarting, sometimes they do that, and sometimes it's very, very important that you follow it. Otherwise, you should restart after every kext installation. Just restart the computer. There's a reason for that. It will kick in the next restart. Another thing that you can do is, well, let's say that you're installing a network kext and you restart and, well, it just can't find your signal. What you can do is you can go to the network settings in your settings. You add a new network and you try and get the PPOE setting to work, or whatever to work. It doesn't matter. You just set it up. What happens is it may or may not work. It may even fail. But when you restart again, it could just maybe detect the card. It worked for me. I know it sounds weird, but you can try fiddling with that and see if it will bring up anything. And then of course if that in the end really doesn't work, then you go and try another kext from kexts.com. So what am I talking about with kexts.com? I'm going to show you right now. And yes, I am very lazy, so instead of typing it in, oh no, that's not what I want to do. Oh, it doesn't have to go to. Alright. Kexts.com, and you, well, it's the first one. They changed the site to osx86.net, that doesn't matter. You would get a free account here, and you would sign in, and then afterwards you'd be able to download any of these. So they have a wide range of kexts for you. And of course the first place you're likely going to go is in the network department. And then in here you'll find a whole bunch of kexts, and you can filter it down based on your model. And from there you basically will read the comments. So let's take this one for example. It will tell you the compatibility with OS X. Of course later on you can install those hot corners, which may or may not respect your mouse. And of course they give you compatibility, and they give you a little description. You can download it here, and unfortunately I've chosen one that doesn't have comments. But what the comments do is some people might have issues with these kexts, or these kexts might be total crap. So what happens is you read the comments, and the comments will tell you, okay, this kext is a good kext, it works, this is how you install it. And that's basically all you're looking for, is an installation method, because sometimes when you have to install a kext, you're going to have to install a bundle of kexts. So if you have to install a bundle of kexts, then you need to be aware that there may be a certain order in which you have to install 1, 2, okay, restart, then install 3, 4, restart again, and so on and so forth. And this is very important. I would pay very close attention to this, because it will make or break your system. I know from experience. So essentially, this is the place you want to go. It used to be called kexts.net. They renamed it to OSX86. That's fine, but kexts.com will work. I'll be a little bit less lazy this time. Go to kexts.com, it'll redirect you, and you'll be good to go. Having said that, there isn't really much left to show you guys about after install, but I can tell you that you really don't need to worry much about after install. It's fairly straightforward, and if you have to reinstall, you've done it before. For some of you it may be painful, but it's part of the Hackintosh lifestyle. But once you've got it set up, I mean, it can be really, really nice, like this one. So apart from that, you've read all of these things, and you know where to go in the future. Now, of course, the Hackintosh removal guide is very simple. I'll show you that as my last thing before I leave you for this tutorial, and I basically explain to you how to get rid of Hackintosh. It's so simple. You go into your Mac installer, and you erase the partition that you have Mac on, and you put it as an MS-DOS spat, and then you put in the Windows install disk or your Ubuntu disk, whatever, and guess what? It's going to detect that partition, and it's going to erase it, it's going to use it, it's going to be really happy, it's going to have its new partition. So guess what? It's as if Mac never existed. And if you're dual booting, you may have to consideration, you may have to take the bootloader into consideration. So if you're dual booting with Windows, you might not want Windows to be, you might not want to have taken off your Mac OS X system if it was your primary boot drive, because then you're going to be booting up and it's not going to find a hard drive because you don't have an active drive. So you got to make sure that before you do anything, your active drive is something that will actually boot, or you're going to end up having to reinstall everything. But I mean, that's no big deal. Again, that's not a big deal. You can always get past that. If you reboot and it's not booting into anything, you just basically install Windows or Ubuntu or Repair or whatever, and it will fix that for you. So this has been another Computer Software is Your Friend tutorial. As usual, you can request tutorials. This was a requested tutorial, and I will find a time and I will make one for you guys. And of course, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You can ask any questions. I'll try my best to answer them. Of course, if you don't find your kexts on that place, you can Google them. Just know your hardware. Now, before I go, I nearly forgot to show you this. If ever you need to know something about your Mac, right, you can go to About This Mac, you go to More Info. In Lion, you're lucky because you have this nice little display. But essentially what you're going to need to go and do is go to System Reports, and you will get the system information thing, which you can just as easily have found in Spotlight. Just type in system information in Spotlight and you will find it. And this is basically all of your hardware on this system. And because I used EasyBeast, of course, it gives it the Tony Max thing. And it will basically have all of this information set up, like your network card over here. it will have your graphics card, graphics, over here. And basically, one of the things is you might have a graphics card installed, and well, it might not detect something here. I forgot. I got rid of it. But if the enabled is no, then ultimately you have to fix it. You now know how to get around the post installation and how to trick your computer into being something it's not. So essentially, have a USB ready with all of your kexts and whatnot, and you know where to get them. And of course, you can always go to computersoftwareisyourfriend.blogspot.com, and you can go to Apple, Hackintosh, General, and you will land on the page that you need to be, regardless what version of OS X is out. And all the tutorials that you need are, or want, or request, will try to be here. And as I said, like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you think, let us know if you need any other tips, and we'll try our best over here at Computer Software is Your Friend.